Hi, Kareen. Thank you for joining us today. If you'd like to tell us about yourself, your story, and how you got started on your journey.
Oh, that's a big question already, Marie. Uh, How long have we got? Yeah, so Maria, I'm Kareen Griffiths. My gosh, what do I do? I have a professional career, so my professional work is all around working in corporates, helping leaders and teams and build capacity really when they're working under pressure and stuff like that, and helping people improve that. And then in my personal world, and when I say personal world, my community world, I do a lot around music and mindfulness. It's like obviously one of my key passions, but also it's my way of regulating myself and also helping other people. And then I also do my Celebrate Yourself events, which is on its fifth year, and that's for women. And that's about really championing about why we should celebrate ourselves with everything that we have to deal with. At the same time, we don't do it enough, and it can be seen as a bit of a, oh, well, I do go off and do these things, but it's like, actually, do you intentionally do that? Do you intentionally celebrate, yourself? So yeah, those are like my three pillars of things, as well as speaking and hosting at events. Mm.
Mm. So talk about your journey and getting to that point. So you've touched on your corporate career and your day to day, and then your community events. How does that bridge, and how did you get to that point as well?
Yeah, no, thanks, Marie. I think my corporate career has obviously been the lead part before doing anything in terms of the wellness and well-being piece. The corporate work is something I've been doing for most of my life, really, and that's all been around people and managing teams. Done that in-house, and then I worked for myself for the last sort of 15, 16 years now, working with different lots of organizations and helping them think about how do you get the best out of people with, certain change skills, communication skills, all of that kind of stuff. So that is like sort of, I suppose, the foundation of the work that I've done or my experience. When I came more into the well-being space, that was more probably on my own personal journey. So that personal journey of things you go through yourself, and you realize actually how much am I taking care of myself. And when you go through certain life, whether it be transitions or big events and stuff, and events that change who you are or change how you see the world, then I started to focus more on myself. And when I started to focus more on myself, there were areas that I needed to improve on. There were areas where I was like, well, I put other people first. I'm always there for people, doing things. I think it's a familiar story. But actually, once I'd learnt new ways, new paths of going, well, actually, I don't have to be that person, was incredibly hard actually to do. It opened up new ways of living, and they're not always comfortable ways of living, but it was a way that meant that I would look after my sort of well-being really, as someone who's had ebbs and flows with my mental health, I would say. Why did I end up in the spaces for women? I think that came from the fact that it's a large percentage of women follow me and talk to me and all of that kind of stuff. But I would say though there is a lot, also a good proportion of men, but they don't interact in the same way as the women do. So when the women wellbeing piece came into play, which was around 5 years ago, was when the first time I did um, a collaboration with a friend around. It'd be great to do something around women, and it was all around sort of well-being stuff and menopause and meditation. That kind of went all of sort of the maybe just post COVID, I think. There was lots of stuff on well-being, and we touched into that, but I didn't want it to feel I didn't want it to feel like this heavy part of well-being, the traumas of life all the time. I
Mm.
wanted us to remember that actually our life should be a joy, and or there will be lots of factors that will try and make it not a joy. So we have to be super intentional to make it a joy. And that will be, that's something that I sort of profess to and always push, living my life with joy, pushing for joy, but it doesn't mean that it's only joy, and light and dark, I always say, coexist.
Mm.
So that's how kind of the journey. So there was not like no big strategy or plan. When I set up the well-being side of my work, which was in maybe 2020. At that point, when I set up that part of the business, that's when I really started to get into, that mindfulness perspective and how that really helps me, and then how it helped a lot, thousands of other people now I've touched over the years. Yeah. So yeah, it's been a really, yeah, really great journey actually. I've enjoyed challenging myself, but also not trying to challenge myself and then just seeing what doors open. Not everything has to have some master plan, I believe. Yeah.
And sometimes some of those are the greatest moments where you kind of feel kind of pulled or drawn to. You spoke about some of the wellness modalities that you'd perhaps used yourself. What kind of what's kind of led you towards leaning towards that? So you mentioned about mindfulness. What
Yeah.
kind of practices have you used yourself, even?
Yeah, I qualified to be a mindfulness teacher in 2020. Once I did the qualification, and you learned around what it is, what it means, and then those practices for yourself, and how you were going to be able to hold space for others, whether it be one-to-ones mainly at that time. I recognized that there was, I suppose, a gap, and the gap was the accessibility for people to be able to use this modality. A lot of it was around being still, sitting quiet, lying down, body scans, all that kind of thing. And and whilst that was fine, there was also, I think for me, a lack of accessibility. And I was really conscious about the fact that something that had really enlightened how I lived my life was not particularly inclusive for others. And that can be from cultural perspectives, as well as you, any underrepresented perspectives or that kind of thing. So I really wanted to focus on making it more inclusive and accessible. Um, Secondly to that is my passion for music. So I'm a music lover, like many people are. Someone who's followed music, love music, go to music events, all that kind of stuff. I kind of had brought together, not intentionally, music and mindfulness just through my own journey of enjoying music. And when I bought my decks, it was for me and my journey and my music and bringing music styles together. And that was my practice. And I felt how really therapeutic that was. I found that exploring it with the mindfulness principles was really my practice, and so music became my practice actually. I find it just easy to access, but also because of the mindfulness element, it's how I use it. So it's not used in for escapism and going off and forgetting about the world and being free and all of that, because I wanted it to be used in a way where if you took the music away, you'd still have the what it makes you feel like when you're having a conversation with someone, or whether you're at work and all of that. So the practice is really just for me keeping my body in check, myself in check, my presence in check, which means that I can be, incredibly open to the world and what people present for me in this moment.
Mm. And like you say, with that journey through music and what music can bring to people. Do you want to share some more about I mean, like with your DJing and how you integrate that into your sessions that you deliver and the events that you deliver?
Yeah, yeah, that wasn't really a plan. To be honest with you, absolutely did not have any plans to DJ, to buy decks for for anything or anyone. But when I did buy my decks, it was for me, and because I enjoyed the experience of putting music together. And so when I had done that a few times, and I was messing around on Instagram as I do, and in fact I shared a video, gosh, it must have been last week, where you could see maybe 3 years ago, 4 years ago, I just bought the decks, and I'm actually say on it that I've bought this machine, and it's how not to be a DJ was my sentence. And so I used to just say that to people, I'm not a DJ, I just play music, because I just didn't want the association with the word,
Yeah,
because the word then makes people feel like you're there to entertain, and it wasn't really for that purpose, if that makes sense.
yeah, yeah.
So once I had started to really embody music with this machine, as it were, and bring these stories of music in my world together, Um, I then started to think about how the mindfulness teaching, so the qualification, everything you teach people, and how could I make it so it was more accessible to teach it
Mm,
as a musical experience. So I did a few lives online with that. And when I did a few lives online, because at that point it was when you couldn't really go out much,
mhm,
it was meant that people could go on that musical journey
mhm,
and learn some mindfulness about being more patient, letting go, all of that, using music. But at the same time, people could go away and think, oh, I could use music differently, in my life for this and not have a hang up on the word, mindfulness, etc.
mhm.
But I've also used it for things like to explore bias as well.
Okay.
So I've used it for things that are difficult. And I think that's what I try and get across, which is it's about not just feeling wonderful and calm, it's about how you can explore difficulty using this. And how to be with what's difficult. So I have used music in the past. I mean, when I use music, sorry, I always kind of want to know how people feel when they're listening to that music and if they find it difficult, if they feel like it's not something they typically listen to and all of that kind of stuff. And that helps people explore being curious
Mm,
and what happens if something doesn't feel natural to you if you're listening to a particular type of music and it's not your kind of vibe. We might like, oh, I'm just going to shut that off. But actually, in life, the whole premise is we're amongst lots of things, aren't we? That
mm,
aren't our vibe. So how do you be with what's difficult? So the deepness of it and the underlying factor is that's what the premise of what I use it for. But if you were just going to tell people that and go, oh, well, you're going to go through some difficult, people would just be like, oh, it's another
mm,
deep, heavy. So I make it joyful, I make it experiential, I make it accessible, but I make it so that within the first 2 minutes or 3 minutes, you get what the experience is because you're trying it there
mm,
and then
mm,
in a safe way.
mm. And that seems like a real kind of organic way of combining those two worlds as well. Because, like you're saying, if you come from it as like, oh, a DJ, you've got that expectation that's attached to it. But when you're kind of journeying with it and exploring how people can use music, it kind of music kind of connects people. It connects us to our emotions. It gives voice to our feelings or words to our feelings. And like you say, people can access it, and it makes it really
Yeah.
accessible.
So I think people have kind of sometimes thought I've used it then just for community, but I've used it in businesses,
Mm,
I've took
okay.
my decks into companies, large companies at times, the ones that are a little bit more maybe forward thinking of trying something new. I've used it for inclusion and stuff and belonging and helping people understand those mindfulness attitudes in that context and they explore through activity and then you apply it to real life scenarios. So it's not something that sits separate to life when I'm using that modality.
Mhm. Mm. And that's really, I say that's really good how it then encompasses how people can use it in that accessibility. Is there anything else through your perhaps your teachings or your work that other people can use to regulate themselves with?
I I try to stick with what I know works best that I've seen for myself and for
Mm,
others when it comes to using this as a modality, or even if you're not using music with mindfulness as a modality, if you're using mindfulness in your day-to-day routines without the music.
mhm,
So it's not that it has to be combined,
mhm,
but the music is just the bridge, and then the exploration is how you explore life with those attitudes and things that you can incorporate into your day-to-day routine so it becomes part of what you do when you get up in the morning, when you have a shower, when you make a cup of tea, when you do all of these things, when you go for a walk, when you have a conversation. So it's about weaving in helping people understand how it really applies to life and not that we're off to do some kind of music mindfulness thing and then come back. So it is something that you apply to all of your life. The practice is just the exercise, the same as we always say, don't we? When you go to the gym, the dumbbell is the exercise, right? But the best part about it is when you go picking up in a suitcase, because you're using it as part of day-to-day life to go to an airport, that's where it comes into play.
Hmm.
It's not, you're not thinking of the exercise and what, you're doing it as part of like making your body strong, but you're going off and doing day-to-day life, picking up the bags, reaching up for a cupboard, all of these things. That's the power of it from that physical perspective metaphor. So that's what I try and say to people, that actually it's not the practice is that you're practicing like you would as an exercise, but the benefits is that you start to be really intentional and see clarity and focus and make better decisions because you've regulated yourself through the exercises. So
Mm.
I stick very clearly to my musical mindfulness modality because that is the thing that I've seen work for myself. And ultimately, absolutely, you can go for your mindfulness walking if that's what you want to do. You can do mindful swimming. You can do mindful.
Mm.
It's about how you do the thing.
Mm.
So I tend to stick in that lane for that reason.
Mm. And within that, you mentioned a lot about what gives you joy and how you can gain that sense of being within that. So, is there anything else that you do that creates that joy, that kind of ripple, that kind of expansion?
Um, I think for joy for me is humor.
Mm.
So I do use humor quite a lot. Day to day life's humor. That I think that joy is also about just seeing, some of the things in life that you think, oh my gosh, what is going on here? And having being playful.
Mm.
So I think when we talk about expansive and what connects us, I think humor, if it depends, some humor don't. Same with music, some don't, so it was whatever. But I think humor, I think that collective experience with people, that music, but also I think when it comes to joy, it is I think for me just finding those moments that you can just really have a good old laugh to, really. I laugh a lot by myself, so it's not merely about me helping other people laugh, to be fair. Even though some people will say to me, you do make people laugh, and I'm like, well, I don't intend to because I make myself laugh, right? Because I see something or hear something and I think it's so bizarre, and then you laugh and then you tell someone and they're laughing and you just think, oh, but I don't do it intentionally, if that
Mhm.
makes sense. So I
Mhm.
think joy, I think having a really good sense of humour, being playful with life and trying to find that playfulness of life, really.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's what brings me joy.
Yeah, and I think it's those kind of little moments where that may catch you unaware, but when you can see that joy in it, it can be sometimes it can be really heavy, the world around us and our kind of life experience as well. And when you say about it's funny when you say about um finding humor, and that can be sometimes sometimes a default setting because when you look for the lighter side in life, it just eases that kind of sometimes it can feel a bit of a burden, but
Mm.
it is. I mean, I think I'm really hilarious. I mean, I tell my kids all the time that I think I'm very funny. They sometimes agree, they sometimes don't, but you have to see that kind of funny side of life.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
life can be heavy.
yeah. And I think being real as well, I think it takes a lot for you to be real. We say be your authentic self and be yourself. And I'm like, it takes a lot for you to be yourself in this world. The world that can just not be kind sometimes. And so you do have to have that thick skin and be really comfortable with yourself. And that can be hard for many people.
Mm. And I think does that kind of ebb and flow with that kind of feeling that way? Because I mean, like I notice for myself, sometimes I can feel really quite expansive and really out there, and then other times it can be like a little like kind of a little downward phase, and sometimes you
Mm.
can't always see when you're coming back up how you can you know that you're going to be okay, but sometimes it can be a little difficult.
Yeah, I'm okay with the lows, and
Hmm.
I stick with the lows when it needs to happen because
Mm.
that's part of my process. So
Mm.
I think because I'm so in tune with knowing
Mm,
myself, and I know, way I've been in here a bit too long now. It's about time
mm,
you popped out. I've been in the feeling low for, or what I do sometimes is I will say, it could be to my husband, or even my friend, like, if you notice this
mm,
about me, because I feel like this is what I've been thinking. If I notice that I'm doing that a bit too much, and I might think that, but to somebody else it might not be the case. So I do definitely lean into the networks and just check in to see, okay, am I being like that? Am I
mm,
been, I feel like I've been low for quite some time, and it might not be the case. I think
mm,
that external view is really important because you don't want to get consumed with yourself either. Do you know what I mean?
mm,
So, yeah, definitely that highs and lows. I think I'm much more better and comfortable with those lows, because when having all the anxiety and stuff before, I obviously bypassed the lows and bypassed what my body was saying it was needed.
mm,
So because I bypassed those emotions, and it came out obviously in other ways. So I'm really conscious of, I don't want to miss what's being told, what I'm being told outside of like external chat and whatever. What's my body and environment telling me,
mm,
and how do I navigate it, and what, okay, you're going to have to be in this space for a while, Kareen, and
mm.
just being clear about that, really.
And then that's the journey in itself, though, as well, isn't it? Because all too often people will see you as you present now and not be aware of that journey or that self-reflection that you have as well, that you've had to get to that point, but also being okay with those down moments, those ebbs, and being aware of yourself in that. And like you're saying, if you've got people that you can check with as well, that adds to that that balance.
Yeah. And it's
Mm.
about, being careful that you're not too aware.
Mm.
Yeah,
You
right.
should
So
question yourself all the time. There's
yeah,
just
so
like,
you don't want to be in that sense of like, oh my gosh, I'm so aware,
yeah,
I'm aware of everything, aware, that's a lot too.
yeah,
You want to be out, and I think with the music, there are times when I'm playing, like normally when I'm at home, really, when I'm playing and I want to just lose myself in it, not thinking about mindfulness. I'm just going to lose myself in the music, and then I
mm,
lose myself in the music. And then there's times where I'm like, oh, I'm just going to have it as my practice. And
mm,
obviously then the type of music I'm playing for myself is really leading me into my heart, and and the practice and my exercise. Like, let me get my exercise. So I typically do my exercise most mornings if I'm at home. The first that after I've had my banquet breakfast, as it were. I'm known for my banquet breakfast of a morning.
have to tell me more about the banquet
Yeah, my banquet
breakfast.
breakfast of double egg salmon, sourdough toast, pot of tea, honey. It is my sesame seeds on the top, spinach, courgettes. That is my daily breakfast. I cannot leave my house without it.
Wow, that sounds like a very beauty breakfast. That's like usually, and that when I say that, then it's almost as if like that should be a treat. But why shouldn't that be your usual? Why
Well, it's
should it have to
breakfast,
be?
it's food. Yeah, it's like, oh, that's it. I'm like, it's eggs, a bit of veg, some toast. But because I'm not a big drinker really,
Mm,
so I really hone in onto food and
mm,
what food I really like. You've got to have the lovely niceties of what
mm,
foods. But breakfast is like my best moment of the day, like for my ritual and
mm.
setting myself up. So when I'm up and my son's gone, I sit there and I have my 30 minutes banquet of breakfast. Then I'll do about 20 minutes on music, and depending on what I want that to be, I'll just go in, jump on, have a play, and then I'm set to start work. Yeah.
Wow, and it is. It's creating that ritual then in the routine then as well, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
It's the
that.
routine. Yeah.
Hmm.
It doesn't matter really what time I wake up. It's got to be really, really early. And I'm talking like 3, 4 o'clock in the morning if I can't have that banquet breakfast. But I typically, if I've got a client I'm going to and leaving my house at 6:30, I will be up and I will have that banquet breakfast. Yeah. Yeah, with my little teacup and things.
Yeah, I mean, I bought myself a nice set of teacups. I like my glass. I like to be able, because I only drink herbal tea, but I bought myself tea cups that are
Yeah.
glass that you can see through, and they're my
Mm,
cups for me to have my
mm,
cup of tea.
mm.
But it is. I like the idea of kind of layering those kind of routines and that ritual as
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
and not saving it for Okay.
particular
Yeah.
time in like, yeah, yeah. We some people again, it's we all know that it's whatever suits us,
Mm.
but I is that nourishing of
Yeah.
ourselves, finding those ways to nourish ourselves,
Mm.
and whether it be serving women or whether it's serving, you know, your music mindfulness events, or whether it's serving in the professional arena with businesses, you know, all of them take time and energy, and the fuel is really, you know, key for me.
Mm. And it is because that's that kind of exchange of energy, isn't it? And
Yeah.
allowing yourself that time to ground, whether before, after, but nourishing yourself is so fundamental as a practitioner.
Mm.
And whether that's, like you say, in the mindfulness communities or whether that's in the corporate world, it's about how we can fill ourselves up. And I think
Yeah.
sometimes we lose sight of that. And especially as women, and you mentioned, you touched on it briefly, where we can overgive ourselves and want to fix people, for want of a better word.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I've got so good at that of the minimal fixing, being there but not fixing, right? And it is really liberating when you find those tools to be able to go, why do I feel like I've got to fix? And actually, is this about the other person or is this me? You know, do I really need to help here, or what ways can I help? And also in not checking your own capacities. That's what I see a lot of now, really, is the fact that um, the bucket is full, over full in terms of people's capacity to deal with things, but they're still trying to deal with things because they want to help. And because we talk a lot about we should help people and be kind and all these lovely. I'm like, well, at the same time, you really do need to know, like in your bucket of, in your well, what you can do and what you can't. And that's can be very difficult for people to accept, for people to accept around you when you start to do that. And what also can happen is people can judge you based on what they see on social media. So they can just be very much like, oh, well, you know, you're not calling me or spending time here, but you're on here on social media and looking like you're having a great time and try, you know, that's what's going through
Yeah.
people's minds and heads and spaces. But it's like, well, it's about you have to get to know, or you need to know me. And if you know me, then, you know, those are the questions that you have to ask yourself. And if you are thinking that, you know.
Mm. Yeah. And it is that kind of push pull and learning to say no. And sometimes that can appear selfish or selfless. And, it's two sides of the same coin, isn't it, really? It's like either overgiven or taking time for you, but one's seen as like a badge of honor and others are seen as being indulgent. And it's,
Yeah, yeah, and I really don't understand you know, if you're, I think to be selfish, I don't, it's really difficult if you're a good person to be selfish per
of
se.
course.
Um, I think that people's capacity to deal with things means that you're not going to be able to deal with the right decisions and things like that. A lot of people are cognitively overloaded, and in fact, what I'm probably seeing a lot more of is avoidance of things, not
Mm,
addressing things earlier, you know,
mm,
and therefore it means then back to that joy. Oh, well, you know, it's over there somewhere, or we say putting ourselves first, but I'm just like, well, some people really thrive in bonding by difficulty or bonding by challenging situations. Right, we've got the same problem, so let's just milk our problems together. And actually, it can be quite isolating when you choose not to have that as a way of connecting,
mm,
because then people think, well, you don't relate, and actually you do relate. It's just the fact that you're not going to just connect using that as the thing we connect by all the
mm,
time.
mm. And that journey through self is okay as well. And sometimes we have to wait. Sometimes you wait for somebody else to go first to show that that's possible rather than being the first one to, because that can then get some backlash to it. Learning to say no, or just saying no, that you're not going to do certain things, can
Yeah.
it that's a muscle in itself, muscle. And then when you learn how to flex it and how to do it without that kind of like shrinking feeling.
Yeah, and guilt, you
Yeah.
know, the big massive G word, guilt, you
Mm,
know, like, oh, I feel guilty for not doing that, and then it's just like, how do you draw yourself out and go, well, I've done all, my son's a classic for that, kids are classics for that, aren't you? Because it doesn't matter what you do, they are still looking for more. Like, we went away last week and he's like, right, can I still have McDonald's tomorrow? And can I still have a this? And can I still have some Crocs? Can I still have some? I'm like, we just went away. It makes no difference. So having those boundaries are really important, because honestly, you'd just absolutely be obliterated if it was up to, kids or people, if you didn't put some of those things in place.
Yeah. And with your working with people, so obviously within your corporate world and in your community events as well, is that something that you've always felt drawn to? Is it something that you feel is kind of purpose in life? Where do you think that's come from?
The people thing, I think I was really a good listener at school with friends and things. Friends would be going out with boys and stuff and having the relationship issues and stuff. And they would always come and chat about them and chat to me, and I was always a really good listener or good at giving advice. I had older brothers,
Mm.
so I think I was quite good at being able to be around male company as well. So I had quite a lot of male friends as well as female friends. So therefore, I was just seemed quite natural, that thing. And then when I did go to get my like first job or anything like that, it was people managing. So it was kind of my first experience of managing people and what it meant to manage people. And, I was quite young when I was doing that, in my 20s, but having a team and, people having problems or not turning up to work, or all those things were all quite new, and you had to learn ways of getting people on board. But at that time it was just literally by title position, because no one told you or taught you how to do it any other way. So it was like, because I'm the manager, therefore I'm going to, that's how I used to be. But naturally, you learn that, what works, what doesn't, or how you speak or you shouldn't be speaking to people through that experience. So I think the people thing just came from like being at school. I was head girl at school, so obviously there was something there. I know, check me out. You can stay outside because it's raining and I'm indoors, I'm afraid. Yes, the power of head girldom.
One of my daughters is a head student as well.
She may have been a bit better than I was, but definitely, I just love those days when you're indoors and everybody's outdoors, and you're just like, I can't let you in. I'm so sorry. Shut the door. So, power was a great thing. But I think that having that in school, um, I suppose boded me well on different things that you learn as well. That confidence in yourself as a girl and a black girl, and not being part, and always being that person who everyone gets on with, but doesn't necessarily be the person that they'll always invite to come out or things like that. So I was, you weren't always like the in the trendy crew with everybody, but it was fine, if that makes sense. So I think the people thing just continued from there. People managing was like my big thing, and I did that for the first part of my career, the first 16, 20 years of my sort of career. And then when I started working for myself, you've taken all that people leadership stuff, and then you're like, right, I'm going into different businesses and they see people problems, well, actually, this is what you could do, this is how you do it, this is what's the best way, this is what people, and that's where my change and my communication skills came into play. So I think, yeah, it's just definitely been something that I don't think I was purposely like, that's what I'm going to do, but I think I was just really, really good at it. And because I was good at it, I just continued with it, really.
Mhm. And what life lessons would you say you kind of gained through that experience and the point where you're at now? Any pearls of wisdom that you've gained?
I think that probably the one of the biggest pearls of wisdom was or learnings is that how much I probably had to act in the
Mm-hmm.
work.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't fully be yourself
Mm-hmm.
in work, just because of the type of personality that I had, and that maybe I wish that I had explored my creative side earlier, because I am very sort of creative.
Mm,
And I don't think I explored that early enough, maybe.
mhm,
Um, More in the creative, as in I'd go to music events and explore it creatively, as in going to music, and that was like my thing. But
mhm,
I think actually since this side of the creativity, and I used to write quite a bit before, and then I just
okay.
didn't do it. I remember writing when I was younger, just writing stuff, and I just
Mm,
didn't explore it any further. I think I'd gone into a path, and then it was like, that's the path to earn, that's the path I know.
mhm,
You're trying to make a living, you're trying to be successful. It just didn't feel like other options were an option at that time, you know. So I think the biggest learning is like lessons learned is if I was to say to anybody now, which is really try and open up those paths.
mm,
It's different now because people do have like a bit of a portfolio career now, you know, a bit like I'm like, oh, I do corporate, but I also do a bit of this and I do a bit of that,
mhm,
you know, which is nice to have. But I think definitely, I'm not going to say try and find yourself sooner and all of that kind of stuff, because I think some of it comes with experience and with age. And it is a different world now that people are dealing with in terms of comparison of themselves against things that are in
mm,
socials and all of that good stuff. But I think the sooner you get to a point where you know how systems work, you know how things operate from a environment perspective, and how systems operate in businesses and healthcare and all these things that actually set up our world,
mm,
you'll start to not maybe beat up yourself so much about why some things are the way that they are.
mm. And like when you're saying about exploring that creative side as well, it's that kind of nurturing that within yourself and how. So when you say writing, is that something that you've started again, or is that something that you kind of leave for another time? Do you
I,
still
I,
write?
I've cut bits and pieces. I don't think I've gone back into it in a big way. And I
Mm,
think it's probably time, actually.
mm,
I've found the thing that when I have time, it works.
mm,
And I try not to pile on things. I
mm,
try to simplify things.
mm,
I have work, I run my own business. I've got a son and I'm married. I want to enjoy myself.
mm,
I want to do. So that's already arranged. And then I've got my family and my friends and all the stuff you want to do with them. So with that in itself, based on the pace of the world, adding things in is not like what I try to do now. I try to take things away. I
mm,
try to take things away from and make sure I've got the clarity to choose the right things
mm,
to creativity wise. So I found a thing creativity wise, and it's boding me well.
mm,
I'm trying to stick with that because it's
mm,
easy.
mm, mm,
And if I start to add in things where I'm starting to think a bit more and having to, right, is it giving me that feeling or not?
mm,
Or so I would say I've just done it because of time as well.
mm. Yeah, and time is a kind of precious commodity as well, isn't it? So it's how I really like the way that you say that you try to strip things away rather than adding to and
Yeah.
building. Sometimes people will kind of push, 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 and again, then you're pushing that capacity, then aren't you, until it feels like it's untenable.
Yeah.
Um,
And playing on the decks is new for me,
mm,
actually.
mm,
So already that creative space is not even, playing out or playing in front of people has been exceptionally difficult,
mm,
In the
mm,
mindfulness space, very easy,
mm,
but in other spaces, not so
yeah.
comfortable.
Mhm,
Because I'm holding space for people, it's about the other people. In other spaces, it then feels like it's about you, and
mm.
you go, I'm on this lineup, so the last thing you want to say is come and see me. I'm like, if you want to come, come. And that is a really
Yeah,
new world, really, where
mm,
someone says, "Oh, will you come and play at this event?" I'm like, if it's not mindfulness and it's just
yeah,
pure like playing my music to a
yeah.
crowd of people, that's been really a real challenge.
Mm. That's and why I can't say why do you think that is, because it's not so much that, but I can understand you saying that with regards to, because it's a practice, isn't it? That is quite personal in that journey. And then when you put yourself into another arena that isn't your natural habitat, shall we say?
Yeah.
It's a different kind of expectation as well.
Yeah, because there's that mindfulness music journey where everyone's lovely and kind and fluffy. And then you might go into the other side, which is maybe club and nightlife, which is lovely and people are
Mm.
great, but also it's a different lens
Yeah.
because people are coming for this reason to listen to what they
Mm.
want to hear and listen to music they might want. And because I'm very true to myself when it comes to what I play,
Mm.
it has always been a challenge to do that
Mm.
really, and very easy to be like, no, I'm not sure, and it's great because the younger kids are just really supportive and they're just
Mm.
like, oh, you can do it and stuff, and but it is a bit of it has been a weird one, I think, more because you are saying in those types of arenas, there's a DJ lineup or there's a music lineup and you're like the person. And
Mm.
I don't think in my world, if I think about my career and anything, it has been about me putting
Mm.
myself in front of
Mhm.
this, doing things like the podcast or hosting and holding space. Not a problem at all. But
Mm.
that one, it has been, yeah, incredibly challenging.
Mm. And how are you
Learning a lot about myself
yeah, how are you working through that?
with quite a bit of change resistance.
Okay.
For someone who works in change, I am watching that change. Denial and whatever it may be. I am watching it daily. Yeah, I would say because what you're putting yourself out there, you're putting yourself out there differently,
Mm.
to I feel for me differently because and I'm navigating that by every time I push back. It seems like something presents itself, funnily enough.
Okay.
So when I have tried to push back, and I'm very fortunate because I have a really good community of people and supportive people, and that kind of push you and ask questions of you. So I use obviously my mindfulness as well because it is about being curious to what's possible, being letting go of what doesn't serve you. And so I have to think when I do things, not to just go with that gut reaction and to sit with it and reflect a bit more as opposed to going with the gut reaction of something that feels so like uncomfortable.
Mm.
And we know it says what makes you uncomfortable, comfortable. We know that cliche,
Mhm.
but then I can be like, well, I don't have to do this. So why am I going to make myself uncomfortable? I mean, why would you? There's so many uncomfortable things in life. Why would I do this? I don't have to. And then you kind of use that as your thing. So
Mm.
so it has been a really enlightening journey of that sort of musical DJ space, and I have been quite, as I say, reluctant and resistant
Mhm.
perceptually, and also, you know, kind of me managing that myself and my feelings around all of that, really.
Yeah. And again, that's another kind of experience, another step in your journey. And it's something else that you probably never foresaw however many years ago when you were just doing it for yourself.
No, to be seen, isn't it?
Yeah.
I talk about to people to be seen. We all want to be seen, and I'm like, no, I'm all right. I don't need to be seen.
But it adds to that vulnerability though, doesn't it? When you're putting yourself out there, like you say, why would you do that to yourself?
Yeah, I don't need to be seen, everyone. You need to be seen. I'm all right with seeing myself, right? So let's just stick with that. Let's just stick with the seeing of myself, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it
So,
is. And like we're all growing and expanding in different ways, and everyone's individual, and that may look different.
mm,
That's yours, and how that looks for you and somebody else as well. And like you say, there's no right or wrong, and there's that ebb and flow. And yeah,
yeah.
it's incredible. It is incredible when you think of how we are as humans and that capacity as well. And it does surprise us sometimes what we can overcome and the
Mm,
situations that we can put ourselves in.
mm,
But coming back to those kind of tools and skills that we might have developed and what works
yeah.
for us, it helps us.
Yeah, I wish I'd have learned how mindfulness works in this
Mm.
context earlier, actually,
Mm.
because it has given me that exceptional clarity of things. And I think that was when you talked earlier about, oh, is there anything you wish or learnt or, and I think that probably would have been something that I think if I'd have had that, then I maybe would have made some different choices,
Mm, mm,
and not just gone with the feeling of acceptance by people and what was expected of you of society or societal stuff.
mm,
So I think in some ways, I think having those skills earlier has really kind of helped me. One, with that regulation piece, two, with what am I really feeling here? And is this really real or am I reacting something that's gone on
mm,
from before? You can really ask yourself those questions. But then it also gives you that sort of real clarity and insight, isn't it? And pinpoint, like,
mm.
I can see exactly what's going on here. And that is always great because it means you can navigate things quicker, you know?
Yeah, yeah, and kind of ride through it as well. And
Mm,
know that it'll be okay when you come to the other side. You just got to go through this to get to that point.
yeah,
You'll be all
yeah,
right. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Mm.
incredible. So tell us what's next for your business. You mentioned about your event that you've got. What's new and exciting for yourself?
Yeah, well, it's our fifth event this year, so we are at the compound in Birmingham on the 11th of July at 2 p.m. So we've got our next event, again, women's event, which is going to be amazing. So I'm looking forward to that. I think I will still continue, obviously, on with that journey, and I'm also reflecting on that as well. In the I always want to make sure it's serving the way that we want it to serve and not just something that, I feel, and you've got to keep asking those questions of the community. I think the second one would be with me. I partnered with a friend. She's a nutritional therapist, and one of the things we've seen in our wellbeing space is about how do we make it simpler. So we're looking to launch some masterclasses this year around how do we make it simpler for women. So that's a couple of things. I've got my decompression coaching. I do that for a few clients already, but I'm going to be doing some more of that. I found that people the ask is I want to maybe talk about things, but I don't want to feel like I'm in therapy.
Mm,
And there's not sort of that middle ground between that and then is it therapy when we therapize. So I'm going to be doing some more work around that. So yeah, and then I'll definitely still could be continue working with businesses around that capacity space and how do we make sure that we know how to lead differently in life. I mean, that works for the community as well as businesses, but when you're in a company, performance is key and having the capacity when we know that in the world we have right now is about how we're going to have the expectation is how to do more with less. And really, that's kind of what I'm seeing a lot of now, really, is the expectation to keep doing more, but we've got less. And that's even externally, cost of living, everything. People want to do more, but you haven't got as much money. It's lots of factors around doing more with less. So how do we adjust ourselves accordingly for that?
mm. And have you got any advice for any for people if they are struggling with that? Anything that they can perhaps draw on?
Yeah, I think if there's three things that I would probably ask people to draw on is firstly get the self sorted. And when I say get the self sorted is make sure you know those signs, symptoms, things that are going off track in order for you to do something. That's the first one. The second one I think is check in on if you're avoiding things. And that just can be a creeper, the avoidance piece, because we're so tired. We then just avoid, I can't be bothered with that. I'm checking out with that. I don't need to do that. Oh, it's too much effort, taking my energy, those kind of things. Ultimately, we need to be really clear as to what that really means. And actually, are we avoiding something? That avoidance sits and how soon are we addressing things in real time, not 6 months after the fact.
Mm,
I think the third one I would probably say is to think about your environment and what you're living in and living around. That's
mhm,
your people piece and also outside in the world, and really check that and if that influences how your life is. It could be it could be where you're living. It could be in the home that you're in, right? But I think if you try and take these three components together, it can maybe try and help you oversee and look and pinpoint a bit better what is it that I need to kind of work on here? Because at the minute, those are kind of like the things that I'm kind of seeing myself, and seeing in the work really is that avoidance is getting bigger, which is why people are feeling a lot more depleted and just sitting on things.
There's the real powerful pointers that people can use to take a little bit of that control back and that narrative.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, take start off with those three things and assess yourself against those three things. Um, check in, knowing, if you are running at level 10, how long have you been running at level 10? But couple that with, does that mean you're missing things and not doing things? Like sometimes with my, I see it with my son, I'm just like, I just cannot be bothered to say, I just can't be bothered. I can't be bothered. So when I get to that, I'm like, right, we don't have to action everything, but what teachings is that? And what am I teaching him? And then also, yeah, as I say, just what's around us and we know what's being perpetuated, obviously, news wise, what's perpetuating work. And it's about knowing how to like, right, am I addressing that? Am I avoiding that? And is that sitting somewhere in me and making me feel a certain way? So yeah, if you keep keeping these things on your radar and try and pinpoint that needs to move off and I say in real time, find the skills for that.
Yeah, great pointers. Now, how can people get in touch with you? How's best to connect with you?
I am on most social media outlets. I'm on most social media. So yeah, most of my professional work is in LinkedIn, so people can contact me there. Kareen Griffiths, follow me there on LinkedIn, on my socials, on Instagram under Kareen May for all things celebrate yourself, music, music mindfulness, DJ, and all of that kind of stuff is in there. Those are probably the two best ways, and also my website, which is www.calmify.co.uk. But I think you want to get a feel for what it is, what I do, who I am. Those are the two areas that I would probably say go for it. I've got music as well on Mixcloud as well under Kareen May. So if people want to listen to some music, head over to Mixcloud on Kareen May. Have I got any others before I come off the call and go, oh, I didn't say, oh. But you'd find me on one of those for sure.
Excellent. That's great. So thanks for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure to chat all things mindfulness, music, and everything else in between.
Thank you for having me. And yeah, thank you just so much for asking me to do this. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome.